the spirit of magis voor, wagis toe. For those who are South African and speak Afrikaans, you'll be familiar with the phrase, essentially meaning that once your stomach is full, your eyes tend to get a bit heavy. But that shall not be taking place throughout the remainder of the day. If anything, we're here to revitalize the energy, the conversation, and of course, maintain the outcomes that we're looking to derive for. Over the next 35 minutes, we're going to hear from panelists who are going to help us continue in expanding on our conversations, largely focused on empowering economies across G20. For many of you who have already joined us in the room, I guess you can tell that later on in the program, we will have significant conversations, the delivery of key statements, and of course, ahead of the culmination of the B20 South Africa Summit, we'll also be hearing from His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and of course, closing off the plenary to give us an update into how best we continue with the recommendations that have been shared. But to help us ensure that we amplify our messaging and build up on previous conversations and head it to ensuring a level of sustainability in terms of the partnerships we have, our next panel discussion is one that is going to help us underscore how we leave no one behind. Growing growth that supports all. And this was echoed in earlier panel discussions where we do ensure that based on the recommendations, the partnerships and camaraderie that we all seek, that we're able to find areas of alignment between both the global south, global north, east or west. I'm going to welcome our panelists who will be joining us on stage to help us understand how it is that we tap into financial networks, manufacturing and entrepreneurship that can all work together to drive sustainable economic growth. To tell us more about these themes that we will be focused on, please help me welcome to the front of the stage, taking a seat to my left-hand side, Buhani Hlongwane, the Interim Managing Executive for Transactional Banking at Absa CIB. He brings more than 20 years of international banking experience with deep expertise in corporate banking, payments, trade finance, and digital solutions. A big round of applause, please, to Buhani Hlongwane. He'll be followed by Lord Karan Bilimoria, an entrepreneur, crossbench peer in the House of Lords and founder of Cobra Bear, now one of the United Kingdom's most recognized brands. Please warmly welcome to the front Lord Karan Bilimoria joining us on the stage. We also have a significant South African contributor and entrepreneur, Dr. Morena Makawana, the Chief Executive of BioVac, known for being the continent's leading voices in vaccine manufacturing as well as health security. Please warmly welcome to the front of the stage, Dr. Makawana joining us on stage. This panel discussion that will be moderated by a leading voice in corporate conversations, a reputation strategist, and of course a key contributor to ensuring that we host conversations of consequence in South Africa and across the continent. Please warmly welcome to the front of the stage, Zinhle Oyiya, joining us to moderate this conversation. A warm round of applause for all of them, please. Zinhle, it's over to you.
Thank you, Gugu, for that warm introduction, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Thank you for making it back from lunch, as Gugu said.
I'll just pick that up for you.
Thank you so much. This is why I do panels with men only, so they can do the work. Now that I'm sure you're all here, fantastic. Now that I'm sure you're all here, distinguished guests, this conversation is the one really where the rubber hits the road. This is where all of the work that's been taking place over the past year, and dare I say over the past few years, comes to a head as we take practical steps to understand how the inclusive growth that we're all striving for is going to impact every single level of society. We leave no one behind. It's a short conversation, and it is so because everything that needs to be said has already been said at the summit. We're here to summarize, gentlemen, and to leave our audience with the call to walk out of this room and ensure that these conversations live on. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for making it here. I'm going to start with you, Lord Karan, because you've had quite a journey with the B20, seeing it get to a point where the Global South now hosts G20 like it's a normal Tuesday. What day of the week is it today? I can't even count. But let's talk a little bit about that journey and how we got here, because that is important to understand where the priorities that we see in the recommendations are right now.
Yes, so thank you. First and foremost, I'm absolutely delighted to be here in Johannesburg at the B20 and most importantly, be back in South Africa because my wife, Heather, is South African and I'm an honorary South African, so I'm home.
He can stay.
I've been coming here for 33 years to this lovely country, and I was president of the Confederation of British Industry. And in 2023, 2 years ago, I was in India when India was the host of the G20 and the B20, and I spoke at the B20. And at that time, president of the CBI, the biggest announcement for me at that G20 was the African Union being admitted to the G20. And here we are 2 years later with the G20 in Africa, in South Africa. So it means a lot to me. Now, the theme of this particular panel is about SMEs, entrepreneurship, finance, inclusion. And I don't just talk, I've walked the talk. I started my business, Cobra Bear, from scratch when I was a student in my 20s. I got the idea. I went from India as a 19-year-old to study in the UK. I qualified as a chartered accountant with EY, with Ernst & Young. I did a law degree at Cambridge. And while I was at Cambridge, I came up with the idea for Cobra Bear. And most business ideas are very simple, big ideas, where you're dissatisfied as a consumer or a customer, and you think, I can do this better, I can do this differently, I can change the marketplace forever. And another way of looking at it is, you love something on the one hand, and you hate something on the other hand. And I've always loved beer from the time I was allowed to drink it. And
yet you didn't bring us any.
Sorry?
You didn't bring us any to sample your SME work.
Well, we've got great beer in this country. And I hated the beers in the UK when fizzy lagers that were tasteless and bland and bloating and awful on their own and with food. And I loved English ale. And I thought, why can't I produce a beer that has the smoothness of an ale and the refreshment of a lager combined that would make it the best accompaniment to food and spicy food? And that was the genesis of Cobra Beer. Now, an idea is one thing, doing it is another thing. And to do it as an entrepreneur, there's one short word. You need guts. You need guts to do it, but more importantly, you need guts to stick with it when others would give up. And the most difficult thing when you're starting a business from scratch is money. How do you raise the money when you have no security? I was a student, I had student debt to pay off. How do you raise that money with no collateral? And that is really tough. And it starts with bank overdrafts and friends and family. But then you have government schemes. Like in the UK, the government guarantees banks up to 85% at one stage to lend to an SME of up to 6 million rand. And I tell you, without those loans, I wouldn't have been able to get Cobra off the ground. Things like invoice finance and factoring, where you get finance secured on your debtors. The more your sales grow, the more finance you get. And again, more of that finance is available, that can generate growth for business. So I've lived the hardship of growing a business from scratch, nearly failing 3 times, and the struggles of raising finance.
So you say it takes guts. It sounds like it takes policy and an enabling environment. And let's talk a little bit about what that means from a finance point of view. I love that you said we have great beers in this country. We do indeed. We also have a lot of great ideas in this country. There are great businesses that are started on this continent. There are great innovations that stem from Africa that just don't get to see the light of day, at least at the scale that we know they could in a developed market. So, Bohane, I want to come to you and talk about that unlocking of finance and what we need to see that happen more effectively across the continent. And again, we're talking very practical levers here today.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sinclair. And it's great to be with you. I think that throughout the 2 days, we've already said a lot of things that I will not repeat. So we've spoken about the barriers to financing, especially in SMEs and small businesses and all kinds of, youth-owned business, women-led business. So we've already spoken about that. Infrastructure, and a whole lot of other stuff that we've spoken about. In my experience as a banker for 23 years, and a lot of it with ABSA, one of the things that, unfortunately, because my friends and family know I'm a banker, is I always get a call to say, hey, you know what, I've started a business, can you organize financing for me, right? Most of those conversations end up with disappointment, because I can't do that. But importantly, though, is one of the things we've talked about, and we've talked about at length, and we actually have as banks, as DFIs, as insurance companies, as private funders, is we've identified the fact that blended financing and risk sharing solutions work. I think we've all agreed to that. And I think as you and I were reflecting earlier, blended financing is probably the weight of the B20.
Of this committee, yeah.
I think the point, therefore, is no more about the fact that these things are out there and we should do them. The real question, in my view, is how do we scale them up? And scaling them up is not a big rocket science question. I think the challenge I want to put into the room and everywhere in the continent is, let's ask ourselves the question of what would we need to do to double our exposures in all these financing, risk sharing opportunities and facilities that we have in place. Because actually, we talk about, we refer to the infrastructure financing gap in billions of dollars, we refer to trade financing gap, we refer to working capital financing gap, all of these things. We actually have the solutions. We know the solutions that work. The solutions that work is commercial banks, is DFIs, is insurance companies with guarantees, it's fintechs, it's private funders, all collaborating to actually provide finance and risk sharing solutions. We know the answer. But I think the question is scale. And I think each of us here need to be thinking about scales, because the amount of challenge that is out there and the requirements that are out there are not going to be met by some small programs here and there. So I think what I want to add to the blended financing and risk sharing solution that we all know about is one word: scale.
So then I'll throw back to you the question around, I think, understanding that scale is something that requires us to come together. We formed things like the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. What do we need to, why have we not seen that scale take place? Why have we not seen that level of collaboration across the continent? And really, what is the cost of us not doing this? How is this impacting the SMEs on the ground and the real growth that we're looking to be able to push down, up and down the value chain within the financial?
All of these things where, as I was saying earlier, somebody might just say to you, you need Form X, and you've never heard what Form X is in your life. And the point is, we need to, and this is a challenge to governments, it's a challenge to government agencies. Let's make it easier for people to choose the option to buy from Kenya, to buy from Ghana, to buy from South Africa, and so forth. And the challenges are actually just inefficient.
Within the pharmaceutical sector is one of the most difficult area in terms of developing, because you're dealing with, viruses, bugs, all the biological things. So the barriers to entry are very high. And so a lot of the times when our company was formed, and as we're going through, people were saying, but what are you doing with this in Africa? I mean, will you ever get it right? Just stop what you're doing, and let the other countries and continents be able to service us. The COVID came, okay, and now people understood, okay, there's this thing called a vaccine and we need it. And so at least fortunately we can be able to talk about it. But I want to talk beyond vaccines, Zintle, because what we are is a biotechnology sector. So whilst we're doing, but it's a biotechnology sector. When people think about biotechnology sector, they think about the Boston area, they think about Silicon Valley, they think about Singapore, where those are hubs, and it's never associated with the continent. So what we're doing is actually building not only a company that will be doing vaccines, but it's actually growing a biotechnology sector, so that our scientists and our pharmacists can find employment here. They don't have to go overseas. And we tick a few boxes, beyond what we do. So we are high infrastructure, infrastructure we've spoken about. So a lot of CapEx that you need. We need finance, from DFIs and from others. We do meaningful employment in terms of pharmacists, biotechnologists, really, and ultimately, there's a good impact to society. I mean, what an industry to be in. I mean, that you can do all of those things. But it's real, tangible things that are happening here in South Africa. We're based in Cape Town, and that's where we are also finding the ecosystem that is only now is enabling us to at least do a little bit more and push a little bit more, and to really, prove that biotechnology and sophistication can happen right here on the continent.
So you've spoken very much to your sector, but what I'm hearing here is industrial self-reliance. how we create on the continent, and the ability for our value chain to live here and for us all to benefit from it. And maybe let's talk about a bit more of your understanding on how that can become a pathway to inclusive growth and how you've managed to create that market as well for yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, and again, COVID is probably in people's memories. So the best that not only our company, but the best that any African company could do if you wanted to manufacture vaccines was to get the raw material from whoever that you partnered with, and only then would you be able to do the downstream side of the manufacture. But we're now getting into a space where we're now developing our own vaccines from scratch. Now that's R&D, okay? Now R&D in our sector is never associated with Africa, but we can now start talking about that, in terms of talking about R&D. And ultimately, as I say, that it has to have a meaningful impact. But to put that together is not as easy as I'm describing. It's not only about the people that are there, but it's the whole ecosystem that you need. You need government assistance. You need long-term tenure of capital. You just really need to be patient and a little bit crazy to be in this sector. And this is where there's this saying I think that we know about, that what is it? The earliest time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
The best time to plant a tree, yes.
And the second one is now. Our sector is like that. You really need 10, 20 years. It needs to survive politics and the era and governments. We really need long-term tenure. And, but that's the only way that we can get a thriving biotechnology sector going on the continent.
Lord Karen, your view on creating this enabling environment, because we've now established that this is really where our focus needs to be.
In creating an environment.
This enabling environment,
yes. So I'm now proud to be chair of the International Chamber of Commerce, the ICC UK, and the International Chamber of Commerce is the largest business organization in the world with 45 million businesses all over the world, including here, and we have our Secretary General, John Denton, who's over here with us as well. We focus on trade, and we focus on championing business. Look at trade. How many SMEs export? Many more of them should export, and we should encourage them to export, and government can play a big role in providing the finance. When it comes to trade, digital trade, we champion the way with the ICC. With digital trade, you can reduce what used to take 3 months of paper-based trading to 1 hour. You can save costs by 80%. You can increase productivity by 60%. This is there for the taking. In the UK, we passed an act in Parliament, in the House of Lords where I sit, on digital trade. Why don't we use it around the world? So that's one example. The next is when it comes to finance and collaboration and government working together with business and with universities. We haven't mentioned that. In your field, in the pandemic, when I was president of CBI, we had the UK government working with Oxford University, which then partnered with AstraZeneca, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, based in Oxford, but headquartered in Cambridge, and then partnering with the Serum Institute of India, the largest vaccine manufacturers in the world, to produce 2 billion doses of the COVID vaccine that saved I don't know how many millions of lives. And that came out of a collaboration of government, universities, business working together. When it comes to providing finance, look at the microfinance initiatives that exist around the world, including the famous one from Bangladesh from the Nobel Prize winner. Now, do you know the statistics on microfinance? Women borrow a lot of the money, and they pay back nearly 100% of that money. And it is that we need to encourage, to have that finance available. Look at India. India, 1.4 billion people, has leapfrogged in terms of technology. India's digital identity cards that everyone in India has, but then you have digital payments that are better than anywhere else in the world. And what that means is it's inclusive. Anyone can use those digital payments. A person selling on the streets can use the digital payments. It brings in inclusivity when it comes to finance. So I want to end with this. The key role government has is to create the environment for business to flourish and to champion entrepreneurship. When I went to the UK in the early 80s, the UK was known as the sick man of Europe. Entrepreneurship was looked down upon. Since then, it has changed. And there was a glass ceiling for people from abroad like me who came as immigrants. They said, you'll never get to the top because you will not be allowed to get to the top as a foreigner. That was true in the 80s. Today, it's not true at all. That glass ceiling has been shattered. And we've got people from ethnic minorities reaching the very top in the UK in every field, including a prime minister of Indian origin in the UK. So this change in championing entrepreneurship where anyone can succeed has happened in the UK. We have more big companies, unicorns, than almost any other country in the world. The same thing has happened over here in South Africa. Yesterday, Professor Naidu, who's been chairing a lot of the panels, with fellow Harvard Business School alumni, he gave me a case study on Nelson Mandela. And you look back at this country when I first came here in 1992, how before that, aspiration did not exist. You could not get anywhere in life. Today, you can get anywhere, regardless of race, religion, or background in this country. And that has changed. Now, if you have that aspirational attitude, our motto at Cobra Beer was aspire and achieve against all odds with integrity. And today we can aspire and we can achieve and we can get there and we can do it with integrity. And I make this final point. Mahatma Gandhi was a South African. And he went to India. And he's been a great mentor to so many of us, including to Nelson Mandela himself. And his favorite saying is this, if I may paraphrase: you have to believe, because your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits form your character, and your character determines your destiny. And this country is destined for great things, as is Africa. Thank you, B20. Thank you, G20.
Thank you, Lord Karen. I think that's a strong place for us to leave it, ladies and gentlemen. If there's one thing that's been clear from the discussions is that business certainly believes, and that is showcased by the level of investment in the conversations and meetings that have taken place over the past year. We've seen how former B20 presidency countries have come along the journey with South Africa and the rest of the continent, as this has been South Africa's G20 and South Africa's B20, but shared with the continent. So it's been led from Africa and shared with the world. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think, thank you for leaving the room with a tone, South Africans will remember this, that says we are alive with possibility. And that is something that we can take over into the next few sessions for the remainder of the day as we hand over to government what is the business posture, and hopefully that is belief. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I am Zinhle Oya. Thank you to my panel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zinhle, as well as to our panelists for giving us some insight into a key conversation that has been held today, helping us contextualize just so much passion and energy and feeling and character that really helps us depict how best it is that we should be exploring on leveling up on the partnerships as well as new markets and opportunities we need to adapt to. For many of us here in the room, we might have heard some feedback regarding how best it is that we continue with the legacy of the B20. Now, this year, as we know, has been one particular year where we continue to seek some insight and partnership and feedback as to building up on the opportunities that have been made present. One thing's for certain is that we continue to hear from various participants within the business community as to how we build on the opportunities that lie ahead. So, our next session is one that's going to help paint clearer context and color regarding how best it is that beyond 2025, beyond the conversations that have taken place in this room, that fundamentally there is a legacy to B20 South Africa and B20 that is representative of the continent at large. So, without any further ado, please help me welcome the head of the B20 South Africa Secretariat, a man who has a very clear understanding of business, policy, and its alignment with key stakeholders like yourselves. Dr. Anthony Costa, who together with his team have been working tirelessly to ensure that not only does the summit come to life, but that even in its legacy, the partnerships that we look to develop continue to live longer. Please warmly welcome to the front of the stage Dr. Anthony Costa, who has previously been part of the private office of the President. He's spearheaded several initiatives, such as the President's Investment Mobilization Program, as well as worked with both government and private sector institutions. A warm welcome, please, to Dr. Anthony Costa. So in my line of work, if this was television, we'd go to an ad break. However, Dr. Costa and his panelists will be joining us shortly, and I do believe to give us a greater level of, there he is. Thanks, Anthony.
I think we just need to get a mic. Thank you, Gugu. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Apologies for my late entrance. I did not mean to steal the show. We are, of course, all eagerly anticipating the arrival of His Excellency, the President of South Africa, and, of course, the President of the G20, just a mere 2 days ahead of the G20 summit in Johannesburg, a historic first for South Africa and for the continent. We were scheduled to talk through legacy initiatives and focus and highlight on some of our key legacy initiatives. I'm going to be a little bit flexible as to how we handle that. And instead, I'm just going to provide a brief overview of legacy initiatives and what will be flowing from B20 South Africa. People ask, what are legacy initiatives? And sometimes they actually go so far as to ask, what is the point of B20? Why are you doing this, going through this process, spending that money? Now, this is, of course, unfortunately, a bit of a disheartening question to ask someone who spent 1 year working on this, if not rude, because we would like to think that this process is an end in itself. It brings together business leaders from around the world. It brings together people online, virtually, in person in Cape Town in February, and over the past 2 days in Johannesburg. It allows for interaction, engagement, and the sharing of views. We make recommendations to the G20 working groups. We have developed 8 extremely thorough and compelling papers with some 30 recommendations in total, which have been handed to the Presidency, as well as various appearances and interactions with the G20 and on multiple platforms across the world. We believe that regardless of the G20's final recommendations and conclusions, which of course are out of our hands and take place within a very challenging context, business can independently apply many of these recommendations. And based on our interactions and engagements, we believe that many business leaders are indeed making this commitment. The B20, however, though, also has what are called legacy initiatives. These are particular projects or programs which are instituted at a particular B20 with partner organizations and have a longevity, continuing from year to year and focusing on harnessing the network that has been built up during the B20 to deliver real impact. We continue initiatives that come from previous B20s, including Indonesia, India, and Brazil, as well as some of the earlier editions, and then have added a series of legacy initiatives from B20 South Africa. The B20 Secretariat underwent quite a rigorous process, working with our network, our different partners, to call for submissions as to projects that were deliverable and impactful and would have support, and evaluated those against the B20 criteria, and are pleased that we have some 11 legacy initiatives, some new, others flowing from previous years, which will continue and emerge as a result of B20 South Africa. We've divided them into several categories. The first, mining and critical minerals, which of course is key for the South African and the African economy, as well as many other resource-rich countries. Within here, we have 2. The first is the B20 collaboration on critical minerals in Africa, securing energy and the energy transition, which is done in conjunction with the World Economic Forum. And the second, transforming mining-dependent economies into sustainable economic hubs. A lot is made of the transition from coal to renewable energy and the impact on coal plants, but there's also an impact on communities where coal mines close as a result of this necessary but often economically challenging transition, and this is in conjunction with Minerals Council South Africa. The second category is food, climate, and sustainability. Within this one, we have 4. First, South African Food Lost and Waste Initiative by Nestle Eastern and Southern Africa, as well as the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa. Bloomberg New Energy Finance are launching a South Africa Academy, and Bloomberg NEF also continuing with their Carbon Knowledge Hub for carbon markets, an initiative for which they have been responsible for several years and provides an incredibly valuable resource for the business community as well as governments and civil society. And we also have a Beyond Collaboration Platform initiative which will be launched by South African breweries in partnership with B20 South Africa. The next category is education and the future of work. This, of course, was the focus of one of our key task forces. Within that, we have a special report on youth, women, and SMMEs in trade, which Boston Consulting Group will champion in conjunction with the B20. We also have a solutions exchange on youth pathways to earning by Yellowwoods Holdings, Business Unity South Africa, and Business Leadership South Africa, recognizing, of course, that youth unemployment is a significant challenge in the continent generally and in South Africa. And this is a very tangible opportunity to make progress, building on some of the government business partnerships that have taken fruit and flourished in recent years. The next category is around entrepreneurships, and the ICC Center of Entrepreneurship, Trade Routes Africa, will be launched by the International Chamber of Commerce, and the ICC will run that in conjunction with B20 South Africa. We have 2 final categories. One is finance and capital access. A lot of work has been done on the cost of capital in Africa and access to capital, both by the B20 Finance and Infrastructure Task Force, as well as the G20 Special Commission, led by former Finance Minister Trevor Manuel. And there is a legacy initiative on reducing the cost of capital in Africa, led by Standard Bank Group, Africa Practice, Oliver Wyman and Deloitte, together with B20. And then we have a specific initiative looking at continuity between B20s. The weakness in the B20 process, much as with the G20 process, is that each country starts afresh. You've never done this process before. You learn along the way, particularly from previous hosts, such as Brazil in South Africa's case, who were incredibly helpful. You become very good, you learn from your mistakes, and then you never do it again. So we are working both with our partner and successor organizations, but this also refers more broadly to a specific initiative which Wings Global Philanthropy Network, together with Standard Bank, will be launching, looking at the role philanthropy can play within the capital stack, how philanthropy can contribute to financing more broadly. It's clear that the president hasn't arrived, and I am not on comms with the control room, so either I introduce my panel, or we... Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we're going to curtail this session. The president will be arriving shortly, and I now trust in Gugu to come and save me from what will soon become an embarrassing silence. Thank you.
As you asked and requested. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Costa, for assisting us and giving us an overview of the Legacy Project. I do witness that the room is getting fuller and fuller. The excitement and the energy is certainly building up, as we're well aware on the part of the program that we've looked to build up on now. More than anything, we are ensuring the fact that we do have a clear understanding of the legacy opportunities and projects that will continue, and we will hear further insight as to how this plays a critical role in not only South Africa's economy, but that of our G20 partners too, and B20 states. So this is essentially where we're going to get a better understanding of how these continue to expand further. One particular theme we've been hearing from many of the speakers, though, is that business is committed. If there's anything that we all walk away with, is a clear understanding that we are aligned. But one of the key themes that we need to be mindful of is the fact that politics and politicians do need to come on board. And as a result, this is where we're actually going to acknowledge Ladies and gentlemen, if we could be upstanding as we're going to acknowledge the presence and the entrance of His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa. He is joined as well by the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition in the Republic of South Africa, Minister Pax Dao. It's my great honor, ladies and gentlemen, as we not only acknowledge the presence of our president who is with us here today. We understand he will be joining us on stage shortly to address us with a formal opening and acknowledgement and participation as we do follow with the necessary protocol. But thank you for your acknowledgement of His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa. Thank you kindly, ladies and gentlemen. We appreciate the participation that all of you have given us as we acknowledge the first citizen of the country, an individual who has remained committed to ensuring that collaborations between business, government, as well as key stakeholders do continue. Well, it's with this said that we do want to ensure that we continue with this level of collaboration and camaraderie, and we will continue now with the legacy projects that we will hear from. However, to continue with the acknowledgement of active participation from government, which is keen, eager, and always been willing to not only lend an ear to business, but to collaborate with us, we will follow through now with an introductory speech as well as acknowledgement. As I call up to the stage, it's with great honor and privilege that I welcome South Africa's Minister of Trade, Industry, and Competition to reflect not only on the B20, its collaborative efforts with the G20, and of course, with many of you here joining us in the room as keen international partners looking to build up on our collaborative efforts, how South Africa and the continent remains open to business and open markets. Please warmly welcome to the front of the stage, the Minister at the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, Minister Pax Dao.
Thank you very much to our program director. Allow me to acknowledge the President of the Republic, President Cyril Ramaphosa, Excellencies, representatives of governments that are present here this afternoon. Of course, our hosts, leaders of business, led by the President of Business Unity South Africa and President of the B20, and all other colleagues here present, business leaders, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Since Cabinet approved the hosting of South Africa's G20 presidency under the theme, Fostering Solidarity, Equality and Sustainable Development, we've worked tirelessly to reach this juncture. The theme has guided the priorities of the working groups in both the Sherpa and Finance tracks and the Trade and Investment Working Group, and have informed the high-level deliverables of South Africa's G20 presidency. Ladies and gentlemen, South Africa has advanced its G20 presidency to advocate for and mobilize support for the developing economies of Africa and the Global South, building on the efforts and successes of the Indonesian, Indian, and Brazilian G20 presidencies to champion the developmental agenda. South Africa has played an important role in promoting the interest of the developing world in the G20, including encouraging G20 action on debt suspension for developing countries and advancing the G20 OECD initiative on base erosion and profit sharing, or rather profit shifting, predictable and sustainable financing for development, and addressing the critical issue of debt vulnerability of many countries of the Global South, will remain a priority. Program Director, excuse me. While the challenges we face are common, their causes and consequences are unevenly distributed. Inequality poses a significant threat to global economic growth, development, and stability, as the disparities in wealth and development within and between countries are both unjust and unsustainable. A lack of predictable and sustainable financing for development and climate action exacerbates these inequalities. This is worsened further by polarized ownership patterns of critical resources for development, extreme vulnerability to pandemics, and other global health emergencies. These challenges are difficult to overcome given crippling sovereign debt levels that force many countries to sacrifice their development obligations to service unmanageable debt. Ladies and gentlemen, considering these challenges, with the conclusion of the G20 Trade and Investment ministerial meetings, the majority of G20 members expressed support for the outcomes proposed by the South African presidency. Crucially, even with the differing views on the causes of today's global trade challenges, the meeting succeeded in adopting a consensus trade and investment ministerial declaration. Ministers recognized that trade and investment can be a key driver of inclusion, economic growth, inclusive development, job creation, and technological progress. There was agreement to strive to ensure that the benefits of trade reach all segments of society. G20 ministers further encouraged that value addition takes place throughout value chains and as close to source as possible. The ministers noted the non-binding toolbox for harnessing investment policies for sustainable energy, digital transformation, and public health support, an enabling environment for investment that was developed as part of the G20 presidency. G20 countries had different views on the proposed non-binding G20 trade and investment framework to enable sustainable industrialization, yet had agreed that the agenda remains important given the importance that trade and investment policies can play in supporting green industrialization. Ministers further recognized the importance of the World Trade Organization to advance issues that acknowledged that the agreed upon rules in the WTO are key to facilitating global trade. We further agreed to constructively engage towards a successful 14th Ministerial Conference in March 2026 in Cameroon. As I conclude, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to share that the Presidency's initiative on the G20 Africa Cooperation Agenda on trade and investment received strong support from nearly all G20 members. The voluntary and non-binding initiative is designed to strengthen Africa's growth and development potential in global trade. On that note, it is my singular pleasure and privilege, which I've been tasked to do, which is to read the CV of the President. It is not always that you can do that, but it is my privilege. Ladies and gentlemen, the President has led us through a very difficult preparatory process towards this G20. It's been a period in which there's been changes in the global trading environment, impact on dynamics in global trade, impact on participation in the G20 processes. Yet under his leadership, as a country, we've been resilient, we've been able to forge ahead, we've been able to engage with business, civil society, and all stakeholders under the leadership of a president that said, not only do we have a responsibility to host the G20, we have a responsibility to ensure that Africa's G20 gives voice to African countries and the potential for their growth and development. And we can say that this is a president that has demonstrated this not only in word but in deed, because during the period of, if you like, vaccine apartheid and challenges during the COVID pandemic, he was at the forefront of ensuring equitable access to PPE, to vaccine, and other interventions to help African countries in particular to overcome these challenges. So it would have been remiss of us as a country under his leadership to not ensure that this G20 and B20 processes are successful and that the voice of Africa finds expression in these G20 processes. It gives me great pleasure to welcome to the podium His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, and indeed President of the G20. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's be seated, please. Thank you, Minister Pakstow, Program Director, B20 co-chairs, Ms. Nonkululeko Nyembezi and Mr. Mpolisi Gocho, B20 South African Sherpa, Mr. Kes Kovadia, Minister of International Relations, and Minister of Finance, Minister of Trade, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation is called Ronald Lamola, and the Minister of Finance, Godongwane, AU and EU commissioners, members of the local Business Advisory Council, members of the International Business Advocacy Council, and members of the International Business Advocacy Caucus, ambassadors and high commissioners here present, and B20 Sherpas and delegates, and distinguished guests and friends. It's a real joy to be amongst you here. I've made it a bit of a habit these days that as I walk into meetings, I want to read the audience and test the temperature of the audience. And as I walk in, particularly when I have to be amongst business people, as I enter, I immediately have a sense that there is a wonderful smell of money. But then that is often accompanied by another element, which is, as I've just come back from this few minutes ago with Minister Lamola and Godongwane, we've just come back from the B20 or G20 Social Summit. Now, as I walked in, there was a big round of applause. And people were like saying, President, 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 with great love and affection. So as I walked in here, there was silence. Absolute silence. No. Rather than see it as a negative, I told myself that, gee, I'm at the right place here. Because as I say, I read my audience, and as you didn't applaud, I was taking my steps, walking alongside some of your colleagues, looking at their faces, seeing how they are responding to this moment. But as I got to the front, you applauded, which told me that there is real weighty money here. It is indeed a great honor to address you all, to address a gathering of business people from across the globe who, by your presence here, have affirmed your commitment to and support for our G20 process, but also indirectly to support a better Africa and a better world. This G20, as you well know, is meeting for the very first time on African soil, and we as South Africa are truly honored and privileged to be the first country on the continent to be hosting the G20. From every corner of the earth, people are returning to this place, the cradle of humanity, to reflect on the state of our world and to chart a way forward to a more inclusive and a more prosperous and more sustainable future, which through your presence, I'd like to believe you have been doing, returning to where we all originated, and to come and draw from the wisdom that resides in this continent. This is a moment of great significance for our continent. It is also a moment of great opportunity, I'd like to believe. It is an opportunity for Africa to assert itself and to assert its place in global affairs. When we accepted the presidency of the G20, we immediately said that we are going to focus on Africa and get the world to start looking at Africa and its great potential, to affirm its position as a leader of economic growth and social progress. It is in this continent that we believe the great focus should be. Africa has some of the fastest growing economies in the world. It has the youngest population, and it is endowed with abundant resources, natural resources and human capital. It is also endowed with critical minerals that will build the economy of the future, and with the fertile lands that can feed the world, as well as having the sun and the wind that will power revolution in energy. The African Continental Free Trade Area provides an unprecedented opportunity to harness these resources for the good of the people of the continent. It promises a new era of trade, of investment across the borders that had so far been held back. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area promises greater alignment of rules, of regulations, of standards, as well as of laws. It promises the seamless movement of goods and the provision of services across a market of 1.4 billion people. As the work done by the B20 has made clear, Africa has the potential to be the next frontier of global production, commerce, as well as innovation. And we will call on the global community to embrace Africa's rise. Some years ago, the front page of The Economist magazine depicted Africa as a continent that is lost, that is backwards, but Africa is on the rise. It is Africa that seeks to be more prosperous, and by being prosperous, we'd like to believe that we therefore will have a more prosperous world. An Africa that is at peace, that is stable, that is well-governed, and that has the means to meet the needs of its people, makes for a better world. if the G20 is to realize its mission of fostering a more stable and prosperous world, a mission which was its original mission, then Africa's growth and development must be made a priority. This calls for investment in infrastructure and industry. It calls for investment in the people of this continent, especially the young people. It calls for technology to be spread around. It calls for a massive increase in finance for climate action and a just transition for African economies. Now, Africa's growth and development calls for a more deliberate and more decisive action towards debt sustainability on the African continent. Many African countries are unable to invest in their people. They are unable to invest in infrastructure or in productive activity because of the cost of servicing their debt. Removing their burden of debt will unleash the potential of many African economies and the contribution that they can make to global growth. This task has been bolstered in recent days by the release of the report of the Africa Expert Panel that is chaired by former South African Finance Minister Trevor Manuel, whom we asked to corral a number of experts, both on our continent and outside of our continent. The panel's report highlights the high cost of capital that is faced by African countries, which are higher than in other regions with similar fundamentals. It recommends measures to mobilize significantly more concessional funding from multilateral development banks and African trade and finance institutions. The report says that we need to address biased risk perceptions of Africa by mandating greater transparency and accountability from credit rating organizations or agencies. Taken together, the detailed recommendation of the expert panel could create the conditions for an investment boom on our continent. Through its deliberations over the past year, the B20 has done much to reinforce the value of Africa's rise. And it has outlined in detail the actions that need to be taken, as well as the conditions that need to be met to realize the rise of the continent that I'm talking about. The B20 has done much to position business as a force for progress. The B20 could not have been clearer. The global business community is prepared, is willing, and able to drive inclusive growth, sustainable growth, and resilient growth as well. The global business community has made itself a reliable partner, keen to work with governments, with multilateral bodies, with social partners, and with communities in pursuit of the common good. Now, I say this advisedly, as we here in South Africa have developed a culture and a good practice of working together with business, where we build a partnership, or we have built a partnership that is somewhat institutionalized and where we work together. And I must say that we have found business to be very supportive, to be keen, to help us address the challenges that our country faces. But in the course of that, we've also, as a government, been able to build partnerships with labor, with civil society, and we found this to be really, really effectual. B20 has made it clear that growth must be inclusive. And we've been pleased that here in South Africa, our business compatriots have also made growth inclusiveness to be their goal and priority. Those who have been marginalized, women, youth, persons with disabilities, and the unemployed, must become active and must become beneficial participants in the economy, whether at national level and also whether at global level. This is a matter of social and economic justice, but it is much more than that. It is an opportunity to harness the capabilities, the talents, and the effort of billions of people to unleash the productive potential of humanity. This calls for an approach that invests in people. It must start in the earliest of years of life, establishing through quality foundational education a platform for learning that produces the skills that the economy of tomorrow will need. It calls for accessible, quality healthcare, for affordable social security and focused poverty alleviation measures. And it calls for support for micro, social, and medium enterprises, for entrepreneurs, and for informal businesses to be given an opportunity to grow and to thrive. Workers need to be skilled and reskilled, as well as upskilled, as methods of production change, as new industries emerge, as old industries decline, and as technology advances at an ever-increasing rate. The B20 has said that growth must be sustainable. For the last 2 centuries, the extraordinary growth of global economy has been achieved at the expense of the very resources on which our species relies for survival. We now know that unless we change course, urgently for that matter, as well as resolutely, the conditions of life on this planet will become intolerable. The move to a low-carbon economy cannot be delayed. Indeed, it must be accelerated. As we undertake this transition, we must be sure not to further deepen inequality between and within countries. We cannot disadvantage those countries that bear the least responsibility for climate change, yet are today most vulnerable to its effects. We therefore need a massive increase in financial support for just and inclusive transitions in developing economies. We must share knowledge and expertise as well as technology to address the challenges that those countries will face. At the same time, we must be wary of unilateral trade measures that seek to promote cleaner energy, but that further restrict fair market access for economies that are still developing and growing. We need to pursue fair, transparent, multilateral trade agreements that do not punish countries for a climate crisis that they did not create. Now, from the experience of recent years, we are clear that growth must be resilient, and that is clear. We have seen the huge disruptions to productions and trade that can be caused by global pandemics, by wars, by conflicts, by geopolitical turbulence, and also by unilateral decisions that are taken that impact on trade. At such times, we appreciate the value of multilateral institutions and a rules-based world order. And as we have become democracies, particularly in the global south, we were fed the message that you need to have rule of law. You need to embrace values. You need to have good governance. But in recent times, we've seen how those who were trying to teach us those laws and those values are the very ones who are violating all those values, who are destroying those very values. And we ask ourselves, what are we expected to do now? Because, yes, we are developing our economies. We are sovereign countries, and we need to be treated as equals. Our sovereignty needs to be respected. We need to sit around the table as equals and having the same share of knowledge, the same share of capability, without any bullying the other, without any. For in the past, for most of us in the global south, we were colonized. We were not even allowed a moment around at the table. We were not even allowed to be in the room. And we've now been arguing that we would like to be in the room. And we appreciate the importance of diverse and resilient supply chains, regulatory coherence, and predictable trade relations. As we work to reinforce the resilience of our economies and the resilience of the global economy, we must direct greater effort towards multilateralism and strengthen the multilateral system, but also in doing so to reduce the inequality that manifests itself in many ways. A more equal world in which political and economic power is more fairly distributed, in which all people have an equal voice and an equal stake. Such a world is more stable and more resilient. And that is the world that many of us want to live in. The G20 Global Inequality Report that was produced by Nobel laureate Professor Joseph Stiglitz and his committee of independent experts that I appointed provides valuable guidance on the actions we can take towards such a world. The recommendations contained in the committee's report reinforce many of the priorities and actions that have been put forward at the B20 summit, and indeed throughout the year's B20 engagements. South Africa embarked on its G20 presidency determined to advance the principles of equality, of solidarity, and sustainability. Now, over the course of the past year, most of the countries of the G20 have rallied in support of these principles, understanding that they are fundamental to our shared future as humanity. We commend and applaud and thank the B20 for having imbued these principles with meaning and relevance. And I congratulate the B20 team and everyone from across the globe who participated in this worthy effort and who are now determined to be part of the important work that lies ahead in building a better future. As I said, I've just come back from the G20 Social Summit, attended by some 5,000 people. This was a process that was started by President Lula da Silva, President of Brazil, as Brazil was the president of the G20 last year. We decided that we would like to take it forward. And taking it forward has been one of the most worthwhile decisions we have taken, because we realized that out there were a number of communities, a number of partners that we should have who are hungry to put their views forward. And they participated through 230 meetings, surpassing what the G20 meetings have been about. G20 has been, with the Sherpas and all that, have been 130. They engaged in 230 meetings. And who are they? They are the B women, the G women rather, G20 women. They are the G20 youth. They are the G20 disabled people. They are the G20 people of the LGBTIQ. And sometimes they call themselves queers. They say we are the G20 queers. And they are people. They are people. There's the sport element and the labor element and. And we counted more than like 22 formations that have become part of the G20 family. Now, elsewhere in the world, we have been branded as South Africa as having convened the G100. And my retort is, no, we didn't convene the G100. We have convened the G million, if you like, the G20 million. Because if we are to create a world that is prosperous, a world that is caring, a world that is more equal, a world that is underpinned by solidarity, we do believe that it's important to involve the people who are going to be affected by the decisions that the Leaders' Summit is going to take day after tomorrow. And they have been so forward that they gave me their own declaration. They collectively, 5,000 people, much more than you are and much more than I'm going to have in 2 days' time, just 20. They are 5,000. They were able to reach a declaration. But I congratulate you too, because you have your own declaration. So we are very pleased with the participation that we have seen. It's been rich, it's been deep, it's been meaningful, and I'd like to thank you all as the B20 for having honored South Africa. Your participation, I believe 45% of the people participating here are from other lands or other countries. With the social summit, there were 20% participants from other countries. So you are much better than what the social summit produced. But thank you so much. For me, this is a real honor. And I will not talk about what smell I am now sensing here, because I smell consensus. I smell real agreement on the issues that you set out to do. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, we thank you and we appreciate you for your contribution. We don't want you to go too far and would actually kindly request that you make your way back to the center stage, sir, for a photo opportunity and a momentous occasion to mark the significance of the B20 South Africa Summit. At this same juncture, I'd like to welcome back on stage Ubaba Mxolisi Mgojo, who joins us as the co-chair of the B20 South Africa. He's not alone, he is accompanied by Amanda Clark, the CEO and President of the US Chamber of Commerce, helping us on stage and joining us as well for this momentous occasion. This is fundamentally what we have gathered for, ladies and gentlemen, as our three guests do join us here in the front of the stage. Suzanne Clark of the US Chamber of Commerce, Ubaba Mxolisi Mgojo, who is the co-chair of the B20 South Africa, together with His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa. As many of you have your phones out and marking this moment in history, I do want to take you back to the opening statements that we had shared at the opening of the B20 South Africa Summit. I had a talking stick in my hand. A stick at the time that has mentioned is one that does symbolize authority, respect, and ongoing conversation. It symbolizes the opportunity to openly and publicly respect a considered point of view. Well, that particular stick makes its return to the stage, and this time there are two, highlighting the importance and critical nature of bilateral agreements and partnerships that will take place. At this juncture, I'd also like to invite Babumxolisi Mgojo to actually hand over this talking stick together with communique that has been developed by B20 South Africa, and sharing this not only with our counterparts from the US Chamber of Commerce and Industry, but also our president. Babumgojo, the honor and the privilege is all yours, and of course we continue to hand over a moment of significance given the B20 South Africa communique and the talking stick as a representation of us extending this communique with our leadership here in South Africa. If we could have a moment to acknowledge this profound opportunity and partnership. Please stay on stage, Mr. President, and as we also hand over officially to Ms. Suzanne Clark, representing the US Chamber of Commerce and Industry. If all three of our speakers could actually join us for another photo opportunity, again, recognizing this momentous occasion, a significant occasion where B20, held for the first time on the African continent under African skies, being handed over as a representation of our partnership with our peers in the global north, partnering with the peers on the global south. Thank you kindly. Mr. President, we thank you and appreciate your time this afternoon. Please do take your seat. And Suzanne, if you also take your seat kindly, ma'am, we'd appreciate that. Babumgojo will now join us on stage at the podium to share and reflect on the momentous occasion that we've just witnessed. This will give us clarity and context regarding not just the handing over of the talking stick, but deeply, truly, what it represents together with the B20 at South Africa communique. Can we please acknowledge Babumxolisi Mgojo, who will be followed by Ms. Suzanne Clark.
May we continue, please? May we continue, please? His Excellency, President of the Republic of South Africa, and President of the G20, Cyril Ramaphosa, Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Ronald Lamola, Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Park Tau, Deputy Ministers of Treasury, Industry and Competition, Zuko Kozimbi, and Alexander Abrahams, Treasury General, Gwen Ramahopa, former Finance Minister Trevor Manuel, former First Lady Gugu Motlanthe, dignitaries, ambassadors, commissioners, former and incoming B20 shepherds, business leaders, distinguished delegates, esteemed colleagues and friends, Ms. Suzanne Clark, President and CEO of the United States Chamber of Commerce. It is with deep pride and profound sense of responsibility that I stand before you at this moment of transition. Over the course of this presidency, we have tried to lead with purpose, with humility, and with a clear commitment to partnership. And today, as we complete our term and prepare the ground for the United States Chamber of Commerce, we do so with confidence, with gratitude, and with hope for the work that lies ahead. When South Africa assumed this presidency, we made a solemn promise. We promised that the B20 would be action-orientated. We did not want to simply talk, we wanted to deliver. And together, we have done just that. We promised a B20 that reflects the world it serves. For the first time, half of our leadership positions were held by women. This was not symbolic. It was a milestone that must endure because inclusivity is not a choice. It is a necessity for progress. And we made a promise of continuity. We did not wish to invent for the sake of change. We built upon the strong foundation laid by previous presidencies. None of this would have been possible without an extraordinary effort, a collective effort. Allow me to offer my sincere appreciation. The B20 Secretariat, who have carried an extraordinary load with grace, discipline, and quiet excellence. Thank you. To our task force chairs, co-chairs, and deputies who provided leadership and steady guidance, and to every task force member across the world who contributed their time and expertise in both in-person and online, we're deeply grateful. To the International Business Advocacy Caucus and the Local Business Advisory Council, thank you for your counsel, your consistency, and your commitment to the strengthening the impact of this presidency. To our partners and sponsors who supported and enabled us to build a presidency of real substance, thank you for believing in the purpose of this work. To our host organizations, Business Unity South Africa and Business Leadership South Africa, led by Khulekani Mate and Ms. Mbusima Vuso, your steward and commitment have anchored this presidency. Allow me to also recognize our head of secretariat, Dr. Anthony Costa. His leadership, the discipline and service he shaped this presidency in ways that will be left long beyond today. And to my brother, Kez Kovadia, our B20 Sherpa, thank you for accepting this mandate from the BUSA board and carrying it with conviction, integrity, and resolve. I'm sure you don't regret that you didn't go for retirement. And allow me to express something personal. To my sister, my friend, and co-chair, Nku Nyembezi. It has been the hour of a lifetime, a real honor to serve alongside you. We hand over to the United States, not as individuals, but together as partners who have worked and walked this journey side by side. Now, we entrust this presidency to the US Chamber of Commerce. We do so with pride in what has been achieved and with trust in what will be carried forward. We have every confidence in you, Susan, and in your team. The world is watching the next steps with great interest. The responsibility is immense, but so too is the opportunity. May the communiqué serve as a guiding light. And in that same spirit of shared purpose, In African tradition, the walking stick is a symbol of dialogue, of respect, of community. Whoever holds it speaks not only for themselves, but for the collective. May this stick remind us that the leadership is not about command, but about listening. May it guide your hand. May it center the many voices you will hold. And may it remind us all that partnership remains the true foundation of global prosperity. And as we hand over, we do so with pride in what has been achieved and with hope for what it is to come. Lead from Africa, shared with the world. May this spirit continue to guide the B20. Susan, it is now my great honor to invite you to deliver your remarks and take this off our shoulders. We give it humbly to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairman Mgojo, for your leadership and for your friendship. I want to thank both of the chairs for their exemplary work and the entire South Africa team for putting on such a wonderful B20, not just these few days, but the work of the whole year. Thank you so much. Last year, so many of us were together in Brazil, and the South African co-chairs made me commit multiple times to being here this year, and I am delighted to have fulfilled that commitment. I must also say that I am extracting the same commitment from both of you and CAS that you will be with us in the United States next year. I say that among all of your brothers and sisters. Thank you, Mr. President, ministers, excellencies, Sherpas, ladies and gentlemen. We are happy to be here to see the South Africa presidency, which has really represented Africa's growing role in the global economy. You've heard about the population growth, the opportunities that are here. You've done a good job of showcasing that while we have been here, and we are looking forward to continued partnership. I think one of the things that is so special about the B20 is the continuity. It is the fact that year after year, the same Sherpas, the same people, the same business leaders show up with the commitment of the original G20 goals of growth, of expanding growth, of financial stability. You have your team, and you have fostered a real sense of collaboration among B20 nations during a time of quite rapid change. And what has been remarkable, I think, since our time in Sao Paulo is what has been achieved over the past year is a true testament to the power of the B20 and how important the B20 is to global economic stability. Private sector leadership on trade, energy, digital transformation, infrastructure is vital to our shared future. When the business community leads, the world benefits. The relationships formed here, strengthened here, translate directly to greater trade, to greater investment, to greater prosperity. And the American business community is committed to partnering, investing, and driving growth around the world. As the United States prepares to assume the B20 chairmanship, we want to build on this year's momentum and celebrate what G20 countries can achieve when we work together. Because greater economic growth is critical to each of our individual and maybe more importantly, our collective futures. Just one additional percentage point of economic growth speeds up economic advancement in people's lives by a decade. Think about that. Think about what it means for better schools, for better health care, for modernized infrastructure, for opportunity arriving years sooner for millions of people. This is the kind of growth that can only be delivered by free enterprise. And the key to unlocking that prosperity is private sector innovation enabled by smart public policy. To realize this potential, our B20 advocacy will focus on reducing regulatory burdens, unlocking affordable energy, and pioneering new technologies. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce will use our B20 leadership to foster international collaboration that drives prosperity across generations, as we've seen here, as we've seen in Brazil, as we saw in India. The B20 is about continuity. We want to continue to tap into the vision and leadership that came before us. We know that the private sector and private sector collaboration is key to solving some of the greatest challenges facing the globe right now. And we will need all of your engagement over the next year as we work to pursue a pro-growth agenda. We stand ready to partner with you to address our challenges head on, to grab opportunity head on, and to lead the B20 with confidence. As was said earlier about belief, business does believe, and together we can achieve. Thank you.
Thank you kindly, Ms. Clark, for giving us feedback and, of course, a better understanding of how the momentum will continue. What is set at the cornerstone of the B20 South Africa's mission is certainly one that is evidenced by our theme: inclusive growth and prosperity through global cooperation. And more than anything, it's been a tough year, but our mission has been accomplished. And more so, it continues to gain momentum. To the co-chairs and the chairs who have actively participated in sharing their comments, their feedback, and most importantly, sharing these recommendations, they are well received and well noted, not only by us as key stakeholders who continue to amplify the messaging and partnership, but also, as we do understand, well received by our G20 presidency, who in their own right will continue to ensure that these particular outcomes are sustained. We cannot ignore the fact that as we continue to grow and implement much of the solutions that continue to be shared with us, that we do need to consider that this particular B20 is led from Africa and shared with the world, and much like the themes that speak to African culture, from the talking stick to the baobab tree, that this is just but an investment that we are making in the growth of this tree of prosperity that we'd like future generations to benefit from. So as we prepare to close off today's summit, pass on the baton to our peers on the global stage, but yet continue to partner with key players in the local and continental environment, I'd like to welcome back to the stage someone who has shown his dedication and commitment to the B20 from day one. As a key leader, leading with foresight, insight, and of course being open to ongoing camaraderie and partnership, please warmly welcome back to the stage to officially close off, recognize, and of course share his closing remarks with all of us here for the B20 South Africa Summit, the B20 South Africa Sherpa, Mr. Cas Kuvadia. From my evening further.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, before I go into my talk, I just want to say that we opened the B20 summit yesterday with the spirit of Africa. And Mr. President, we'll send you a video of that. And we want to not conclude, but we want to take a pause as we continue on this journey in a similar fashion. And we hope that you will remember us taking this pause and, to a certain extent, saying farewell to all of you as you travel to different parts of the world, but also express our appreciation for this. So, Excellencies and distinguished guests, good afternoon to you. I would like to start by paying tribute to our President, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa. I want to thank him for his leadership, for his vision, for reminding us once again that what principled, courageous African leadership looks like on the world stage, because this is the world stage. The B20 and the G20 is the world stage. Under his stewardship, Africa has not only found its place, its voice, but it has claimed its place, not as a guest at the global table, but as a co-author of the global agenda. And so with deep gratitude and immense pride, I have the honor of bringing this gathering to a close. Yet let this farewell not mark an ending, because to us it's not an ending. We've talked about continuity, and that's what we mean. But the opening of a new chapter, a message led from Africa and shared with the world. Years ago, the Nigerian author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie warned us of something profound: the danger of a single story. So when we reduce a people to one narrative, we flatten their humanity, we erase their complexity, we silence their potential. But Africa is not a single story. It is not only a continent of crisis, of poverty, or instability. It is 1.4 billion stories. It is the laughter of children in Soweto, the code written in Accra, the solar farms of Morocco, the poetry of Ben Okri, and the courage of Nelson Mandela, which brought this country to its It is also the quiet power of women who build empires from the ground. It is the rhythm of possibility. And today, it is the heartbeat today here of global economic transformation. We began this journey with a theme that was both ambitious and urgent: inclusive growth and prosperity through global cooperation. And we thought hard about this, because global cooperation is important, inclusive growth is important, and prosperity for the majority of our people through that inclusive growth is important, majority of the world's people. This was not a slogan, it was a commitment to broaden participation, to embed women and SMEs into leadership and value chains, to fortify resilient supply systems, and to ensure that no region, no voice, no future is left behind. We did not ask for permission to lead. We led with clarity, with courage, and with conviction. Since our inception, the world has shifted. Geopolitical tensions have disrupted trade. Climate-related losses have deepened. Generative AI has redefined productivity and exposed new divides. But within this complexity lies a profound opportunity to reimagine the partnership between business and society, to forge a new model of growth, one that is inclusive, sustainable, and future-ready. And as the President says, the B20 has sent the clear message of inclusive growth, of sustainability, of cooperation, of prosperity, working together. Africa has shown that through its challenges, it finds the strength to seize opportunity, an opportunity that serves as the engine of prosperity and inclusion. Asked me to lead this initiative, I was humbled. It has been one of the greatest honors of my professional life. I have witnessed the extraordinary capacity of African business leaders to engage with global peers, not as recipients of change, but as agents of it. I have seen the pride with which South Africa has carried this responsibility and the earnestness with which our partners have responded. Leadership is not about commanding attention. It is about convening purpose, listening across differences, building bridges where there are divides, and holding fast to the belief that progress is possible even when the path is steep. The handover we have just witnessed is not a conclusion. It is a beginning. It is Africa's contribution to the world, a message of hope, an affirmation of inclusivity and equity, a call to courage, and a blueprint for shared prosperity. It builds on the legacy of past B20 presidencies, and it amplifies Africa's voice, its optimism, its ingenuity, its resilience. It celebrates our strengths, a youthful population, abundant resources, boundless creativity. And it affirms a truth Africa has long understood, that resilience is the strength that enables Africa to grasp the opportunity of prosperity and inclusion. To our colleagues in the United States, on your shoulders now, Suzanne and Gary, and future B20 presidencies. As Mtolisi just said, may this communique serve as a guiding light. Let it stand as a testament to what is possible. When Africa leads with vision and the world responds with hope and purpose, let us not return to the comfort of old paradigms. Let us not retreat into protectionism or fear. Let us, in the words of President Nelson Mandela, reflect our hopes and not our fears. I close with the words of the great African poet, Ben Okri. Our future is greater than our past. We are the miracles that must make the world anew. So friends, let us be the miracles. Let us make the world anew. Let us ensure that the story of Africa and the story of our shared future is not one of scarcity, but of abundance, not one of division, but of dignity, not one of silence, but of song. So I say to all of you, thank you. Thank you for walking this journey with us. Thank you for believing in the power of Africa to lead. And we thus come to this moment. Thank you.
Searching for